is King, creator of everything. He put the sun up in the sky. In fact, he made the stars that shine.
Hey, and welcome back to another Going Upstream in 3 minutes or less. In this segment, Greg will ask the question, why a mosque and not a temple? Jesus' disciples shared a similar curiosity in Matthew chapter 24, verses 1 and 2. Jesus left the temple. His disciples came over and said, "Look at all these buildings." Jesus replied, "Do you see these buildings? They will certainly be torn down. Not one stone will be left in place." The rest was history.
Why a mosque and not a temple? Jesus prophesied the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple prior to his death, burial, resurrection, and ascension. This came to pass in the latter part of that same first century. It was in that day, long after God had offered up his only begotten Son as the only pleasing sacrifice for sin and for uncleanness, wherein God had had enough of the persistent and the continual sacrifices for sin in the temple in Jerusalem. Listen, that's why God destroyed the temple, because they persisted in continuing to offer sacrifices. Nothing happens outside of God's approval. When the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, only then did Israel stop offering those sacrifices. They adamantly refused to believe that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God. And in their refusal, they continued sacrificing the blood of bulls and of goats, despite God's perfect and final offering for sin, once and for all. What I am about to say just might upset a few people. But if ever becoming upset was necessary, it has to do with this very thing. For until Israel cries out to Jesus, to Yeshua, their Messiah, their house will remain desolate. God allowed, God sent, God gave permission, he allowed. The armies which came in and which destroyed Jerusalem with its temple, God allowed that. Even as God allowed this very same thing to happen hundreds of years prior, when the divided kingdom of Israel forsook and forgot the Lord their God in the days of both the Assyrian and of the Babylonian captivities. And know this, the very reason the mosque stands today in Jerusalem, in the very place of the temple, is because God has allowed it. But in the day when Israel shall cry out, Yeshua, our Messiah, in that day, and not a day before, not a moment before, not a second before, only then shall the desolation of the dispersed captivity of Israel make a full return. Jesus is the peace of Israel, and none other or nothing else. He is the peace which we need to pray over Israel, and only him as peace. And even today, the Jewish nation, save for a remnant, still refuses to call out to him and name him as their Messiah. And yet there's not going to be another. That's why the mosque in Jerusalem will remain. And yes, God will allow it to do so. But know this, in that day when all of Israel turns to their Savior and their only Messiah and cries out that name, Yeshua, look out.
Hey, and thank you for listening to another segment of Going Upstream in 3 minutes or less. Psalm 40 and verse 6 says, "Sacrifice and offering thou didst not require. Mine ears hast thou opened. Burnt offering and sin offering hast thou not required." This week, while we are proclaiming Jesus as our high priest and king, let us also proclaim, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord."